news analysis live on Politics and Business TV. The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, has decried the increasing number of out-of-school children in Nigeria. This was disclosed at a two-day regional stakeholders engagement meeting in Gombe on out-of-school children and retention, transition and completion models in Bauchi, Gombe and Adamawa State by the Chief of Bauchi Field Office, Dr. Tushar. UNICEF put the number at 18.3 million, noting that the alarming figure positions Nigeria as the country with the highest number of out-of-school children globally. I'm being joined now by an education consultant who is also the acting president, West African Society Forum, a wax of organizations in Nigeria, the person of Margaret Udo. Good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Right. 18.3 million out-of-school children in Nigeria. Did this come to you as a surprise?
No.
Why not?
Because we've been following up the statistics. And it's not been really good.
Okay. So you weren't even optimistic that things would take a different dimension this time around, or for you, you expect the trajectory to maintain, the same,
No.
Okay. So why didn't it come to you as a surprise?
It doesn't come to me as a surprise because we haven't really put the factors in place. We haven't put those issues that should be addressed to improve the schools and our systems to make education actually functionable and qualitative.
Over time, when Nigerians, see ratings or reports like this, we most often than not want to question the integrity of such reports in terms of, what exactly is the methodology that was employed, to arrive at, a particular or certain figure. But are you concerned about this particular figure, that maybe it came with some sort of sentiment and perhaps to score some cheap political points by whoever?
Every research has limitations. So there is no research document that is 100% correct.
Well, we know, of course, that Nigeria is actually, grappling with a lot of issues, from security issues to economic issues and even education. Of course, we know how much the security issues on ground have, impacted the education sector. But now, while UNICEF says there are 18.3 million out-of-school children in Nigeria, United Nations Educational Cultural Organization, that's UNESCO, had in 2022 put the figure at about 20 million. How would you juxtapose these figures? The much reason why I asked you earlier if you have concerns with the methodology that was used to arrive at this figure of 18.3 million.
I should think that those people that did the research are credible and qualified people. So that's why I told you there are limitations.
Right.
So it may not be 100% correct.
Okay.
But it should be near the result, because when we look at the education sector, it's not quite right. In the first place, I don't think we achieve the outcomes we expect, because of the quality of schools, quality of teachers, the policies that guide education and other things may not make the statistics on certain things concerning education to be quite encouraging. Because if you look at the quality of teachers, for one, this country has driven a teaching profession to those that have nothing doing.
How do you mean?
There are very few, should I say, teachers that enjoy the work.
That are passionate about it.
Passionate, yes, but that's the right word.
Right.
Passionate teachers. We don't have many of them again.
Why is that?
Because of the way they are treated, the salaries and the policies surrounding them. There are so many things that they have not done that have been promised. For instance, you look at the teacher in the school and look at the colleague in the ministry. The colleague in the ministry will have an office, sometimes a car, a driver, and so many things, but the teacher in the school is not treated that way. So most people just stay there to move to the next level, like leave the school to go into the ministry or to go into the administrative sector, and some people are doing it because there's no other job to do.
Well, one would say that civil servants or public servants, somehow they fall under the same category. But when you talk about someone who is working in the ministry and you try to juxtapose, you know, the person's position and the privileges that he or she is enjoying to that of a teacher who is in the classroom, one would begin to wonder if, you know, the aim, or we're already missing the goal. The teacher is in the classroom to impart knowledge, isn't it? To impart knowledge.
Yes.
Right?
It should have a good treatment.
Okay.
How are the staff rooms? There's so many things. I was a teacher.
Right.
So many people leave teaching because of the way they are the teachers are treated, and teachers are not given the facilities that they need. Schools are not equipped to bring out government schools, not private schools, are not equipped properly for qualitative education.
Okay. Now, if you talk about 20-point-something million in 2022, and now we are having 18.3 million out-of-school children in 2024, isn't that a pointer to the fact that there's been some level of significant progress?
Well, yeah, there is.
You don't sound convinced.
No, there is. Yeah. As I told you, limitations. So even the other one might have been lower. So everything depends, because the system should improve with time. There has been a lot of studies to improve the system. So if it doesn't improve at all, it will be wrong and it will be bad. It will mean that we're not doing anything.
All right.
So at least I know that the budget for education has increased. So even I think the teachers are treated better, though not as their counterparts.
Okay.
So things are better.
Okay, now let's talk about the factors contributing to the hike in the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria. You appear to be, you know, concerned in terms of the welfare package, or packages, if you like, for teachers. But how does that affect?
Because I was a teacher.
You were a teacher. You've retired, or you pulled out because you were not properly treated?
I pulled out.
Wow.
I pulled out in 1993, and I was on level 12 going 13. I pulled out because of, we don't need to discuss that today.
You know, but Nigerians will say that things were better off, you know, then, as opposed to what is obtainable now.
That is economically, the price of things, but not the treatment of teachers.
Oh, so nothing has changed? Wow. That's
not much has changed.
All right, not much has changed. Yes. All right. Now, but how does that affect, you know, the number of out-of-school children in the country?
The number of out-of-school children may be affected by something else also. Okay. Like the economic factors.
All right.
You see how things are hard these days. And the priority, a normal parent at a particular level will put his priority on feeding. Like you have the Maslow's laws. You know what Maslow's laws are?
What are those?
You first have to exist before you attain certain levels.
Okay.
The first level is food, shelter, clothing.
Okay.
And that's the priority of the ordinary parent. So to then go to pay fees, you have to move into another level. And right now, what is happening globally, though more in our country, you see the economic hardship. Things are so expensive. Even eating, which is a basic thing because you must live to move on to the next level,
right,
is not available. So how then do you expect poor parents to pay school fees? That's one.
Okay.
Then the schools may not have the facilities that encourage children. Like even the girl child, I don't know the hygiene situation, the toilet facilities and all those things. And then the security. How safe are the children? Then environmental factors, things like safety. How safe are the children? And then affordability of transportation, proximity. A child that goes to school maybe 10 kilometers, 5 kilometers, 2 kilometers, 1 kilometer by your house, those also affect. If the parents cannot afford the transport, it's difficult for a child.
Well, we understand that, you know, back in the days, our parents even had to trek to school. So what has changed all of a sudden?
And the lifestyles have changed.
Okay.
Because we did not go through the same upbringing as our parents. Things have changed. This is another age entirely. You are talking about from Stone Age to industrial age and then the electronic age. This is the age of speed. So things have changed.
Now, when you talk about, let's talk about the economic factor. You know, you mentioned earlier. Indeed,
Yes.
One must first of all exist even before going to, you know, acquire knowledge
Yes.
or gain knowledge in school, which is very, very important. But they say the children are the leaders of tomorrow, right? And if we want the best for our country, it means we have to prioritize what we call education.
Yes.
So a situation whereby you talk about economic factor, you know, as the reason why we have this number of out-of-school children, are you by implication trying to say that things are worse off here in Nigeria as opposed to other climes? Because 18.3 million out-of-school children makes Nigeria, you know, the country with the highest number of out-of-school children. So how do you
it
justify
depends
that?
on what our system prioritizes. You know, in Nigeria, everything is politicized.
How do you mean?
Even the children are politicized.
How do you mean?
Why do we make our citizens to prefer to send their children to private schools? What happens to the public schools? Why are the schools not providing what the private schools provide? It may not be at the same level, but at least for the child to have what we call quality education. That's the question that we have to answer.
All right. So, indeed, it's a question that we really need to get answer to. But when you talk about, you know, all of these factors put together, it appears you're just apportioning the blame on the government at this point?
No, even the cultural values.
Okay.
Early marriage. There are situations in schools. I was in charge of child rights for about 7 years.
Okay.
There are some principals that have to report to us to help out. When an uncle will come from the village to do everything, even to arrest the principal, because this girl is very brilliant or these children are brilliant, they say they don't have parents any longer, nobody to pay their fees, so they should be made to marry. So cultural factors also come in. Okay. Not only what I said, all the cultural factor comes in very, very much.
Okay.
The values that are promoted on education in different communities. Some communities may not see why people should go to school. Some communities or some religious bodies are against the Western education and other things. So those are still the factors.
Okay, you know, when you rule out economic factor, well, security is one, you know, bottleneck that has, you know, impeded, educational growth in the country over time. You also talk about the environmental factor. I mean, we cannot really leave this one out because it calls for great concern. Now, let's talk about affordability. One will recall very clearly when the former governor of Kaduna State was still, you know, in office, former governor Nasir El-Rufai, at some point in time, he had to come up with a policy that any child of school age found on the street hawking during school hours, that child will be arrested. He or she would be able to provide these to our parents, and the parents, you know, should be questioned. That's to tell you the efforts, you know, that government at that level, you know, actually made to ensure that the children are taken off the street. It brings me to the next question, as who is to blame, the government or the parents?
Both have their own blames. But the aspect you just talked about is the Child Rights Act. Because the Child Rights Act, before it went to that in 2003, before it was adopted in 2003, 31st July, we had what we called Universal Basic Education. That was, should have come in, it was introduced, I think, 1999.
You're talking about UBEC?
Right. UBE, Universal Basic Education. UBEC is a commission that should manage those things.
Okay.
And this thing was broken down into early childhood education. And then after that, the basic education and the rest of it. But the provisions may not be made, may not be there for them. For instance, the Child Rights Act, when it was adopted, it says that everything must be at the interest of the child. And education is free. You understand?
Right.
Is it free?
Well, it might not be completely free, one would say, but one can actually
and
go
also
to
the
school without
aspect
paying
of
too much or
arresting.
spending too much.
The aspect of arresting comes to the aspect of compulsory. Not only free, but also what?
Compulsory.
But how can it work when the parents are not cared for? For instance, what is minimum wage? If you compare the minimum wage of Nigeria and other countries, it's a shame. Small countries like Senegal, as at the time I researched into it, Senegal was like 1,000 or 2,000 something, while we are struggling, dollars, to pay that time $85. And
well,
now it has gone so low.
Workers' Day has come and gone. We probably would have invited you to the studio so you can talk to us more about the minimum wage and how poor or how much of a concern it is to you. But now, coming back to the issue on ground, 18.3 million out-of-school children, how much of a concern should this be to the government?
Very much.
At all levels, right?
Should be very significant. It's a problem that it should be tackled seriously by the government to put in all the factors that will help to make children stay in school.
All right.
And also the after effect of school. What is the difference between a child that goes to school to the end and the one that does not go? Do you consider that? Where are the jobs? Where are the skills? Like I brought in the UBE, the Universal Basic Education. I brought it in because the first level of education, that is the early childhood, I think 3 to 5, or from birth, I take it from birth.
3, yeah.
Who are the experts? Because these things have to be done by the experts. Because these are the basics of sustainability of life. Discovery of the child at that level. Putting the child in the direction, the subjects that the child will eventually go to. Understanding the child. How many people understand the children in school? To bring them up properly. To make them to enjoy school, to make education functional.
All right.
Do we have those facilities? Then you go to the next one, the basic education. We have 360, whatever system. That is a primary school and then the junior secondary school. And the junior secondary school should make children to have skills.
All right.
By the time they leave, so that even if the parents cannot afford them going to senior secondary school, they'll be able to put food on their table. But that's not available in Nigeria.
All right. Well, indeed, there is so much to talk about with a lot to take in. I've just been signaled that we just have to leave the conversation here. It appears there is a lot more that we can, talk about. But perhaps that will be a conversation for another day. But Margaret Udo is an education consultant and also acting president, West African Society Forum, WACSOF,
Civil Society
organizations.
Forum.
All right, in Nigeria. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Okay.
Well, that's it for news analysis. Thank you so much for watching. I am Omoife Peace of St. Mary. Good afternoon.
I really have a lot to talk about.